Welcome back to All Kings Considered. I'm Dan Casey, and this is your weekly breakdown of all things House of the Dragon. And while there were fewer decapitations per capita in this week's Hot D, we had selfishness and shellfishness in equal measure. But before we go off the deep end talking about carcinization, it's time to introduce the amazing folks that are going to join me to talk about this latest episode. First up, she is a staff editor at TV Line, and you've seen her work on Entertainment Weekly, TV Guide, People, Complex, and Nerdist, just to name a few. And she may also be Beyonce's heir, but the Great Council is still deliberating. Please welcome Keisha Hatchett.
Hey! Oh, should I say,
There we go. So, Keisha, what would your sigil be if you were to have a house sigil on Game of Thrones? What would you have on your emblem?
Well, due to my affinity for the Disney Channel original movies, I'm going to say a cheetah because the cheetah girls and they're fierce.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. House DCOM represent.
Exactly. Iconic. And also Raven Simone.
Yes, and the alley cats will never know what hit them. They will perish on the field of battle. And once again joining us, we have Nerdist staff writer and the protector of the realm and Grand Maester of this show, Michael Walsh. Mikey, how jazzed were you when they started rattling off old Valyrian history?
I was very jazzed right up until I ruined the moment for myself when I realized that King Viserys is Westeros' very own Bobby Bacala.
Oh my God.
Velaryon model there. I can't wait to see if he gets whacked and falls over it in a big dramatic moment.
Good old House Gabagool. Long may it reign. All right, folks, we're going to get into this in just a moment, but to talk about this in detail, guess what? We have to spoil the episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, well, I don't know what to tell you. You clicked on this video. You have to live with your choices. But with that said, we are going to try and keep book spoilers to a minimum. But if that thing worries you, or you just, you haven't seen the episode yet because you lead a busy life and you just woke up on the couch and this is playing somehow, well, leave now before you get well and truly crabby. All right, let's get into it, folks. So let's start where the show did at the beginning. I want to talk about this intro because after we had no introduction last week or theme song, now we have a little bit of new, a little bit of old, and I'm curious what your thoughts were on this. What do you think about that theme? What do you think about them using the same theme as Game of Thrones? Did you want another Ramin Djawadi gem? Keisha, let's start with you.
Okay, I was disappointed because there weren't enough dragons. Like House of the Dragons, you expect there to be fire, some kind of dragon. Did not see it. So therefore, I was a little disappointed. Also, no remix. Like, it's the Targaryens. Give them, I don't know, give them a little zazz, a little something extra.
Yeah, we're going to give Prince Daemon 16 bars in the middle. I do agree. I did, as much as I love that theme song, I was like, it's a little safe to just play this again. Like, we already know it's more Game of Thrones. You don't need to really hit us over the head with that. At least like a variation on that theme. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, give us the some more Ramin Djawadi remixes as well. I mean, they did a whole Watch the Throne album. Why can't we have this too?
So somehow I got my prediction about the theme song wrong last week. I hated the lack of an introduction, but I said, well, I know they're not just going to do a moving map and they're going to have a new song. And then we got a moving map in the exact same song, and I hated it too. So 0 for 2 for me so far in the introductions. I would have liked to see something original. I would like to have heard a new song. I don't get it. It was weird. Maybe we're going to get something new every week. I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't think we're going to get something new every week. They have to put their budget into all 17 dragons they're going to put on screen. But no, I think it's like, I don't mind the map because I appreciate they're keeping that sort of like mechanical cog aesthetic a little bit and like sort of the weird like model that they have there. It reminded me of King Viserys' model of Old Valyria. And then you sort of see like, this blood crucible going down towards this pit of fire at the end with the Targaryen sigil. I feel like we definitely want to dive deeper into all the significance of the different sigils we see in this intro at some point. But for now, I'm just excited that there is something there because it was a little jarring last week just to kind of have like, all right, here's your logo for 0.2 seconds and we're in. But let's move on, much like the show did, because there was a big old time skip. This went straight up House of the Dragon Shippuden. I was not expecting a 6-month time skip. So with that in mind, let's talk about the episode at large. What were your thoughts about the episode overall? And did you think the time skip was effective as a device for this?
I loved it, and I think we're going to get even bigger time skips during this first season. There's a lot of great story here, but it comes over the course of years. And we got a little bit of a teaser for next week's episode. We see how far ahead we're going to jump, and that's a good thing. Let's get into the story. Let's get moving. We don't have to sit around and watch it slowly develop while nothing happens. Let's get to the good stuff. So I thought that was great, and I thought it was really effective the way they did it.
Nice.
Yeah. I like that they're getting to the juicy parts now, because the thing that I don't like the most is when they draw out the plot and you're waiting for something to happen forever, and they just wait until the season finale and then you get the big twist. So I appreciate that they're jumping right into the politics, which I love, this idea of figuring out who's going to take the throne. They got the first female heir named, but also I just couldn't get past the child brideness of it all. Like, that was a huge damper on the episode for me, just throwing these young girls at this old man, and I just could not. I was just cringing through every single one of those scenes.
Yeah, I mean, let's just get right into it, talking about King Viserys and his 6 months later. That means it's new wife o'clock apparently in the Seven Kingdoms. And yeah, just the way that these scheming nobles are shoving their young daughters and royal daughters in waiting at this king, it's just like, it's brutal. And I know George R.R. Martin is trying to model it after medieval Europe and all of that, but it's just gross. I like at least that Viserys seemed notably uncomfortable during his walk through the garden with Lena Velaryon, but that whole scene was just, you really get the sense that everyone is just a pawn on a chessboard instead of being seen as real people by these power players. But my bigger question is, do you think that Otto Hightower is the biggest bastard on the show right now? Because I think he might be.
Yes and no. I don't like Sir Otto Hightower, but I'm going to defend him. We have seen how this world works, right? He is the second son. The best he can hope for is the job he has. He's never going to inherit the high tower of Old Town unless his older brother dies. He has a daughter. He has no wife. He has to do something to make sure that he guarantees she has a good life. And was it disgusting? Yes. But everything is disgusting in this world, in this, like you said, these chess pieces. And he got his daughter to become queen. And, we don't have to like him, but we got to give it up to him. That's just masterful work.
Yeah, I mean, he's living up to the reputation of most of the hands of the king, it feels like. It's definitely, I think our description of him last week as being not Littlefinger, but Middlefinger is definitely apt. That scene between him and Alicent, where he's just like, grabs her fingers and like is like, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you're the comeliest girl at court. Why do you do this? And we saw that close up on her nervously picking at her fingers as like this self-harm response during her courtship scene with King Viserys. It's just brutal. It brings a lot of depth to this as well. Like, she's being the dutiful daughter, but at what cost? At her own, like, yes, she becomes queen, but it seems at her own well-being and sanity and just sort of like physical well-being at this point too. But Keisha, what were your thoughts on this sort of like larger plot line with King Viserys?
Okay, so Sir Otto is a horrible father. Let's get that out of the way. Terrible,
Yes.
worst dad. But I'm not mad at his political scheming because he's smart. He knows how this world works. But also, I feel like there's kind of an element of revenge there, because remember when Daemon like knocked his son off, played dirty during the jousting? I feel like there's an element of revenge where he may be also plotting to get into the house, get into that secure spot, and then maybe maybe do something to Viserys, maybe an accidental death, who knows? But I feel like there's another element to this whole plotting to get within his good graces.
Well, I definitely think that he's obviously playing the long game here. It's all about like securing your lineage, and that includes his as well. That would make his grandson the eventual heir to the Iron Throne, definitely making sure that he's going to be well taken care of as well. But I think you might be onto something there, because King Viserys, Seems like he's in kind of rough shape. Last week we saw he had that weird back wound. This week he's getting a maggot manicure, and it just seems like it's a tough time for this guy. Maybe he needs a comfier chair. Mikey, what do you think about that chair that he won't stop injuring himself on?
Okay, Aegon the Conqueror leaves his family two things. One is a dream / prophecy that they are responsible for the safety of the entire world, right? This is on House Targaryen. We must unite Westeros to fight the darkness when it comes one day. And everybody just ignores that when it comes time to make good decisions, right? Viserys is like, who should I marry? Everyone's like, you got to marry Lena. And he's like, okay, but what if I don't? What if I'm selfish, right? So the important thing, everybody throws aside. The second thing Aegon left his family was the most uncomfortable, most dangerous chair in the world. He wanted it to be uncomfortable. He wanted you to sit in it and remember that this is a seat of responsibility. That's the one they take seriously. Nobody ever does anything to protect themselves from the sword sticking in their back. So it's like, oh, this wound, you might have got literally stabbed in the back and die. Oh, now you might lose a finger, you're gonna get a maggot bath. No, it's too important. I must sit in this chair while also not doing anything else I'm responsible for.
Okay, but here's what I don't understand. Why can't you just add some padding?
The realm deems pillows unacceptable.
Although maybe they don't know what they're doing. Did you see the fixed job on that stone dragon? Come on, that's terrible.
Those are the realm's finest stonemasons.
That's the best the stonemasons can do. Get new stonemasons.
We had them all murdered after Maegor, so that they're still learning their trade. They have to rebuild the supply of stonemasons in the Seven Kingdoms. But I did like how the key to Viserys' heart was simply just fixing his D&D many, and that did the trick. And he's like, yes, I will marry this teenager, not this preteen. Oh my God. Well, let's talk about the sort of not the elephant in the room, but one of the more awkward moments continually through this episode, especially at the end there when they had their tense sort of like stare down, which is Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, previously named the first female heir to the throne. She had so many awkward moments this episode as everyone's just sort of discounting her, overlooking her. But she is such a shrewd political operator. I mean, she called from the get-go what was going to work to resolve the situation on Dragonstone. She figured out the best way to select the only Kingsguard member who had combat experience. And yeah, she knows what she's doing. And I think that there was a telling line where she just wants to be seen as not just as daddy's little girl, but as someone who can be of value to the realm. But what were your thoughts on Rhaenyra this episode in particular? And I definitely want to focus on in a moment her scene with Rhaenys as well, because that was a nice like sort of past meets future moment. Keisha, what were your thoughts on that?
I like this slowly coming into her own and showing that she is observant. She knows what's going down, but even being surrounded in this world that's dominated by men and knowing when to make her big plays, I think is a very smart move. So, she's the first heir and that's going to come with a lot of danger, but I think she's going to be prepared for it because she knows how this world works. She's seen the way they've acted and she's probably going to adjust her actions accordingly.
Yeah, I just feel bad because she keeps getting hit by these curveballs where she makes the best out of a bad situation repeatedly, even when it sort of puts her in her harm's way in terms of her father's anger, or quite literally when she finds herself in the middle of a tense standoff on Dragonstone. But it's just her look at the end there when King Viserys is like, and I'm going to marry your best friend. This is coming right after him being like, hey, I really don't want us to get estranged. Is there anything I can do that would prevent that? Would marrying your best friend cause that? I sure hope not. Mikey, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
So, she showed that she's both brave and decisive in ways that her father isn't. And you can see the foundation for a really effective ruler. But I thought the best moment for her was understanding something that her father doesn't. She understood that her uncle Daemon is fiercely loyal to the family. Even when he's kind of spitting in the king's face, he sees himself as a Targaryen first and most of all. That is more important to him than anything else. We saw that with the scene at the end with Corlys Velaryon, where he says, like, I can say what I want about my brother. You can't. And she knew that if she showed up and confronted her uncle, that he would step down because he does not actually want to harm her or even her father. He just wants love and respect. And she gets that in a way her father doesn't. And if he did, a lot of these problems would probably be avoided.
Yeah, it's I feel like just talking directly would solve so many of these things. But then I will say sometimes, there's that matter of ego that gets in the way because, when King Viserys, for example, goes to talk to his advisor, is it Lionel Strong? Is that the advisor? He talks to Lionel Strong and he's just like, hey, be straight with me. What's the right thing to do here? Should I marry this child bride or should I do what I want to and throw everything into jeopardy? And he does tell it to him straight. He's like, hey, this is why it'd be good. But I guess ultimately the heart wants what the heart wants, even when it's abjectly horrifying. But yeah, I want to talk about Daemon a little bit too, because I feel like we keep getting new layers of him. We sort of talked about this before when you hit on the subject of second sons. And that's something that Corlys invokes at the end of the episode. But what do you think he's going through right now? I mean, he's seized control of Dragonstone. He's taken Rhaenyra's, she's named the Princess of Dragonstone. What are your thoughts on how we saw Daemon this episode?
I keep going back and forth with him because obviously I feel for him. He's my bad boy named Daemon, bringing back Vampire Diaries memories. But then he does stuff like the City Watch, murdering a bunch of people, and now here throwing a huge tantrum, taking over Dragonstone. And so I feel like part of him is very immature, and he's trying to make this noise to say, pay attention to me. I have feelings, and I'm going to do something about it. So maybe this will get your attention, Viserys, and make you actually listen to me, which sure, now he's angry. So that was not a very smart move. And now you're backed into a corner because any talks that you had before this may have been helpful, but now that he's seen what you're capable of, it's probably not going to go well the next time they sit in a room together.
Yeah, he definitely knows how to kind of destroy any goodwill that he may have had. Like, his brother was just content to leave him be on Dragonstone, it seemed like. But then, you rile up the realm, and the icing on the cake, or the dragon's egg on the bowl of the brown, was just taking the one meant for his son that passed, the heir for a day. It definitely feels like attention-seeking behavior. He's like, he wants to provoke a reaction because obviously he wants to reinstate himself as the heir, but it's just it's brutal to see, especially when your niece has to come be like, hey, cut the crap. You're like, what are you doing? This is my castle. First of all, you're being a giant baby. Mikey, what do you think?
It's really funny. We talked about last week that Daemon understands Otto Hightower in a way that his brother doesn't. But we also see here that Otto Hightower knows exactly who and what Daemon is. And he says, like, are you so desperate for the king's attention? And yeah, he really is. He went to Dragonstone for 6 months, and literally the king didn't say anything to him. Just fine, let him sit there. And all Daemon wants is some recognition, and he wants his brother's love. And, it's funny. You watch and you see what Viserys' shortcomings are, right? He cares about people for the most part. He wants to make everybody happy, but you can't try to make everybody happy, right? It's just an impossible way to rule. We see that his brother, when he rules, goes way too far the other way. He's too cruel. And you can't help but thinking that if Viserys recognized what his brother does well and what he doesn't do well, then maybe naming him Hand of the King would have been really smart, because they could have been a check on each other. And once again, we could have avoided so many of these problems. Just get in a room and talk it out, guys. You don't have to steal dragon eggs. You don't have to have showdowns. As good as that was, by the way, I love that showdown. Looked amazing. It was tense. It was great, but we didn't need to have it. Like, just get together. You're brothers. Just talk it out.
Men with egos, you really think they're gonna sit down and talk? No, absolutely
no.
not.
We're gonna yell at each other on a misty bridge until our 2 large lizard dogs come out to settle it for us. I will say, I did really like how the dragons looked in this episode. Like, I liked how like sort of long and creepy looking that Caraxes looked, and it finally looked believable to me seeing Rhaenyra astride Syrax. I conflating the audiobook pronunciation with the Mortal Kombat show pronunciation. It's just nice to see that, like, they've clearly dumped a lot of time and artistry and money into making sure that these titular creatures look as good as possible. So that was nice to see.
Now we know why he's called the Bloodworm. Like, that's one really long neck. I thought it was the best looking dragon of either show. Yeah, no, it was, and I also liked the sort of little bits of lore we get with the Dragon Keepers speaking in High Valyrian. So it's just, I like that they're sort of doling out these little bits of lore as well that are sort of just like ancillary world building. Oh, and speaking of that scene, another bit from the book that I saw people online were pretty stoked about was they repeated a phrase that George R.R. Martin loves, and that is a mummer's farce. He loves that phrase more than he loves describing trenches doused in butter at feasts and paragraph-long descriptions of food. So that was nice to see. Mikey, was there anything else from the books that stood out to you this episode that you were like, hey, it's nice to see this finally make it to the screen? Well, I love that we are getting to learn why the Stepstones are so important. Even though the Stepstones inherently are terrible, there's a reason that people live on the Iron Islands but not the Stepstones. Like, if you can't be a better destination than the Iron Islands, you are a terrible locale, right? Like, nobody's going there. But, they are very, very important because they are the collection of islands that separate Westeros from Essos. In fact, not to get too deep into the weeds, but it actually used to be called the Arm of Dorne, and it was a land bridge, kind of like, A Song of Ice and Fire's Bering Strait. And the Children of the Forest destroyed it to try to stop the First Men from continuing to come, and that's how we ended up with these islands that if you look at the map, they actually look like stepping stones. It's not a hard name to figure out. But they are important because every ship in the world at some point wants to get up into the Narrow Sea and wants to be able to, trade with the east of Westeros and the west of Essos, and that's fun to say. So I don't think I'll do that anymore. Yeah, it's. I feel like Westeros is just. I didn't realize it was a portmanteau until this moment. But yeah, no, it was for me. It was really cool to see. That's one of my favorite sort of little aspects of Fire and Blood. The triarchy and the stepstones and the crab feeder, most importantly, who definitely feels like they expanded on from the source material and made him look like he's something straight out of Yellow Jackets, more so than what I expected from Fire and Blood. Keisha, what were your thoughts on what we saw of the crab feeder and his weird pirate army?
Never want to be in the same room as him. He's very creepy, but he looked very, very cool. And I have a tendency, like, even with the Mummy, of being kind of attracted to masked men, like Kane in the WWE for a long time. But like, this guy is so creepy, I can't. Like, he's just awesome to see on screen, but also I'm not attracted to him, which means that he's a lot scarier than we normally see to me.
I don't know. I feel like I could get over it for the prospect of unlimited crab legs, but instead on this show we get leg crabs, where some crabs burrowing inside a man who's still alive. Which is that the worst way to die we've seen on the show? It feels it's certainly up there. It's slow, so it's definitely up there. We also saw the sand snakes bury someone in the sand up to his head and let the scorpion go at him. I don't know if that's better or worse. I don't know if it's better or worse than having molten gold poured over your head while your sister watches and does nothing. I feel like that was a real double sting there. The sister betrayal and the gold on the head. He was a pretty lousy brother from what we saw of him. It did feel like he was prepared to sell her into all manner of horrible situations. So, God, that is definitely one of the most enduring death scenes of the show, for sure.
But I actually wonder, like, at what point does shock kick in where the pain is too much and your body just goes numb? Like,
I don't want to find out.
Because that can also be a deciding factor on which is worse. And I feel like when you have those quick deaths, you don't feel a thing. This very slow, but maybe at some point your body has like some weird coping mechanism, and so maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm trying to make this better. There's nothing better. There's nothing better out there.
There's no way to put a tidy bow on this. Maybe like maybe someone will come on and put some Old Bay seasoning on me and some clarified butter, and then I can at least feel like I'm serving a purpose here. But no, actually, it's just pretty brutal.
He's even more terrifying than I think we realized. They released a behind the scenes video in other countries. I don't think it aired in the US, and they revealed that the crab feeder has grayscale. So he's got grayscale. There were some pictures that I saw. They'll probably put it up on YouTube or whatever, but he definitely has grayscale, which also adds a nice little element because the history of grayscale is that it's believed to be a curse against the Velaryons from the Rhaenyra. So there's just more and more layers. And whether or not they even pay off, I think it's just really fun if you want to get deeper and deeper into these, histories and lores of these stories, that the guy who's here causing King Viserys trouble is a guy with grayscale.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that was my first thought when I saw King Viserys about to get his manicure earlier. Is it looked like grayscale, especially when he's talking about the doom of old Valyria and all of that. So it's nice to see them bringing these sort of familiar elements back in. And God, I keep thinking about that Ser Jorah's exfoliation sequence at at Old Town in Game of Thrones, which was just uncomfortable to watch. Just physically cringing with each new layer.
Remind me though, how does grayscale spread real quick? Is it like an STD? Like, do you need like physical contact? Is there fluid contact or just touching?
Yeah, touch. Just one single touch will infect you with it. Ser Jorah, when he got it on the show, he was actually taking a character's storyline that they cut. They cut that character, but they gave Ser Jorah his grayscale. And both of them, both in the book on the show, it's just they got grabbed by one of the stone men when they were trying to save Tyrion. So it's as simple as that. That's why they get sent off. The stone men get sent off to complete isolation, and nobody wants to go near them.
Yeah, weird barbarian leper colony full of the most contagious disease in the world. Just horrible. But let's take it a step back for a moment. And we mentioned this a little bit with House Velaryon. We really got to see the power players of House Velaryon trying their best this week. We get to see Corlys and Rhaenys and their daughter Laena. So what were your thoughts on House Velaryon and how we see them positioned in the realm, and what do you expect from them as we go forward this season?
They obviously have a lot to come back from. Like Rhaenyra is the queen that never was. Corlys has been repeatedly he's in this weird position where he's powerful, but keeps getting disrespected by Viserys, who keeps ignoring his request to send men over to the Stone Islands. So they're both looking to move up. And so on that level, I'm like, yes, I could see why you want to maneuver your daughter into this situation, but oh my God, the parenting on this show, awful. Throwing their 12-year-old at this grown man. I cannot get over that.
What do you think is worse, the parenting or her wig?
Wig.
There's nothing worse than that poor little girl's wig. Nothing. I don't just mean on this episode or this show or this world. I mean ever. In television history, there's nothing worse than that wig. Nothing.
I don't know. I think back to literally any wig that Oliver Queen wore on Arrow, especially on the island. And I think that could give this wig a run for its money. But yeah, I will say, in spite of her distracting hairpiece, I thought she was a great actress. I loved her candor when King Viserys is like, okay, what did your dad tell you to say? And what did your mom tell you to say? And she's just like, well, here's the truth. I'm a child, so you're going to get it unvarnished. But yeah, it's just, I definitely think the parenting might edge it out slightly, just because, they could also buy her a nice hat to wear, a nice hat to keep her out of the sun on this nice sunny day and at the Red Keep.
That poor girl in that George Washington wig. Why?
Oh my goodness. So I loved the scene between not queen, the queen who never was, and Rhaenyra. But let's talk about that final scene we got between Prince Daemon and Corlys Velaryon. What do you think this means for next week and the season at large? Can we expect sort of a power player relationship between these two, or is this just sort of like a doomed alliance in the making?
The show has tried to do it, but I don't think it's fully conveyed how impressive a person Sir Corlys Velaryon really is. He is the most renowned seafarer in Westeros' history. This is a guy who went around the world and did things that nobody had ever done before. And he was so successful, and he says it, with the richest family in the realm. He made his family richer than the Lannisters. That's why, like, right now in this time period in Westeros, they are richer. He is the master of ships. He basically gives the realm the royal fleet. This guy is really, really powerful in a way that I don't think has been fully conveyed yet. And to combine his fleet and his power with a single dragon, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that could take over entire continents. That's how powerful that combination is going forward. And what they choose to do and what they will do will be interesting to see how they fill in those gaps, because those two together are an imposing duo.
Yeah. And I think also they have quite a bit in common. So right now, this is like an alliance of convenience, but maybe there will be a stronger bond because they've both been in that position of just feeling disrespected, feeling ignored. And so that's how incels are raised. So I feel like they're, I'm sorry, but it's true. But so I feel like that's going to be a bonding, like, man, we're both in this crappy situation. Let's do something about it.
But yeah, it's I definitely think I agree with that a bit. It being an alliance of convenience, you really feel that when Corlys mentioned, he's like sort of critiquing Viserys. And I loved that moment where, you get that sense, like you were saying earlier, that Daemon is fiercely loyal to his family. He's like, I can talk about the king like that. You can't. And Corlys is just like, right. Anyway, so about this alliance, but yeah, that's what has me really stoked for that spinoff they're making, the Sea Snake, or I think they're calling it, the Sea Snake. Mm-hmm. The 10,000 Ships is a different one. That's with Princess Nymeria. Yeah, sorry, a lot of ones about ships, but just like I'll say, just like Sir Davos Seaworth was my favorite character in the original Game of Thrones. Corlys Velaryon, early contender for my favorite character of this show. I just like the sort of bravado of this like seafaring guy who is built his own kingdom by just becoming so rich from exploring stuff that no one else would do. And it really has me hopeful that we'll continue to see different parts of Westeros and Essos that we didn't get to see in the original Game of Thrones. Like, we're already seeing that with the Stepstones. We're going to see horrifying things like the Crab Feeder next week. Looks like it's going to be a really brutal episode. Like, this week was a little more sort of not table setting per se, but a little more political intrigue and behind the scenes skullduggery. Next week looks like it's going to be just a brutal battle. And, we have Miguel Sapochnik as one of the co-showrunners. He directed some of the biggest battles in the original Game of Thrones series, including the Battle of the Bastards. So what are you looking forward to from next week's episode?
Well, I guess I'm a little surprised how much they gave away in the preview for next week's episode.
Just a little.
Like Otto Hightower just laid it all out, like, oh, you have a son and he will be king. Like, okay, guys, we're watching the show,
Yeah.
So, as fun as it's going to be, I mean, they showed a lot from the Battle of the Stepstones too. So there's not, I don't think, a lot of surprises. So I think I'm more interested in seeing a little bit more of the political machinations going on and seeing how Rhaenyra responds to her new half brother.
Same. I'm all about family drama. So yes, give me more of Rhaenyra and Viserys going at it. I want to see also just the dynamic between Daemon and Viserys, because that is one of the most interesting dynamics to me too. Because yes, Daemon is fiercely loyal to his brother, but like, how long will that last given how strained they are now? Like, will he look at Corlys as his new brother? Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking out for as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see more of these pairings that we got a taste of in the first episode, because I think these first two have done a great job of sort of setting the scene for what's going to unfold across the season. And, I like we mentioned earlier, there's definitely going to be more time skips. So they really need to kind of solidify some of these core relationships now, because if we jump around too much, people are going to be like, what's happening? I thought this was right now. Like I heard some coworkers earlier discussing like, wait, it was a 6 month time skip, because, people just miss things. So it's interesting to see how this is all going to play out. But as we start to wind down, I want to know, who was your MVP of this episode?
All right, please, don't yell at me. I'm not an Otto Hightower apologist. I promise I'm not. But he owned this episode. Two big things, even beyond getting his daughter married to the king. The way he manipulated Viserys when Viserys asked him about marrying Lena, and he started talking about his own wife and how he would hate to be forced to marry someone he didn't care about. I mean, we keep bringing up Littlefinger. That was even better, because there was some truth behind it, and he was using his own experiences to manipulate the king. I thought that was really good. I also thought it was pretty impressive when he did the right thing and he went to Dragonstone to face down Daemon instead of the king, and he knew he might not come back. He went, and you saw it on the Kingsguard faces. They weren't sure how it was going to end either, and I just thought he kind of looked brave. And not everything he does is going to be terrible. Most of it, I think, will be terrible. That happens when you play the Game of Thrones. But I think this was his episode. I think he owned it.
Yeah, definitely a strong contender. But Keisha, what were your thoughts?
Well, he was my number one because of his political maneuvering in this episode. But then my seconds were tied, Corlys and Rhaenyra, just because they also had really strong moves in this episode. But I also took points off because Corlys is rich but couldn't afford a better wig. And I'm just saying, dude, they don't got salons in the King's Landing or wherever you are. I just feel like, yeah. And for Rhaenyra, like, she could have been number one, but also she got outsmarted by her dad. Like, her dad, you didn't see the whole relationship happening with your best friend. I feel like she needs to step it up.
Yeah, I definitely want to see her step more into her own. She's my pick for MVP, Rhaenyra, because, we did get to really see that, she had to grow up fast. Especially, we saw that start to happen last episode after the death of her mother, so sudden. She has to really step into, and then she was named heir of the throne. And I think we got to see her kind of live up to some of those expectations this episode, but she is still she's not playing like with a full deck. They've only given her like the starter set where it's like, here's several cards that you can play. We're going to let you pick the member of the Kingsguard, but we're not going to let you weigh in on the small council meeting. So I think she's doing a lot with a little, where she's not really being given these big opportunities to kind of make a splash on the Westerosi stage. But then she does something where she goes rogue and then stops a like hostile takeover of Dragonstone from erupting into like an absolute slaughter of the Hand of the King and some of the most elite knights in the Seven Kingdoms. So I think she's going to take it for me as this week's MVP. So I'm excited. But folks, let us know what you think in the comments below, because we want to hear who you think the MVP of this episode is. As we move on as well, were there any sort of like Easter eggs or moments that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up, or anything that we haven't discussed yet that stood out to you?
I think the scene with Rhaenyra and Rhaenys was incredible. And her, the queen who never was, her ability to see through all of it and to call things out the way they are really shows you what Westeros missed out on with their insistence of only having male heirs. That was the reason I don't think I could have Rhaenyra as my MVP, because when somebody just is like, oh, hey, everything you think is a lie and it's all going to go terribly and you can't have any sort of retort to it, I think that cuts into it a little bit. I just think that scene was great. I think both of them were great in that scene. And I'm really excited to see how the show expands on her role, because I want more of Rhaenys.
Yeah, it really made me miss the late, great Diana Rigg as Olenna Tyrell, the absolute reigning queen of just scathing barbs during otherwise like seemingly civil conversations by the garden. So I hope we get more of that as we move on, because it was just it was awesome to see Eve Best just kind of like chew the scenery with these like laser, like these just like darts that would just like sink into Rhaenyra. And she's like, what can I say to this? Because I can try my best, but then you just come back and call me a cupbearer. So I'm gonna pretend like I'm not mad right now. But Keisha, what about you?
No, I was going to say the same scene because I love seeing just like a motherly figure in there, a strong female figure for Rhaenyra because she doesn't have one, and it kind of cuts all of the strong male energy out. So I like that. But I'm also intrigued about like her motivations too, because she also has every reason to kind of stab Rhaenyra in the back because Rhaenyra has everything that she wanted and was denied. But I'm more like that could be a way they go if they were, wanted to have a big twist. But for now, I think it's really good to have that strong relationship where she's kind of showing him like, this is how it is, girl, you know nothing, but I'm going to teach you.
Yeah, it was nice. Definitely cool to see her be like, hey, you don't want to hear this. And I'm going to tell you some hard truths about the world. You just need to know this. And then you'll see by the episode's end just how right I really am. So I have a feeling that they may grow closer, or at least like their interests may align as the season goes on. One more thing I wanted to talk about was the scene with Mysaria and Prince Daemon on Dragonstone after the standoff, where you see that she is angry with him because he lied to everyone about A, them getting married, and B, her being pregnant. And it just gives so much fascinating context to the sheer chaos energy that emanates from everything that Prince Daemon's doing. He's just like, what's your deal, man? Like, I came to you for protection. Like, I thought I'd be safe with you, and here you are just using me like a prop. That's not okay. And it was nice to see him sort of being taken aback by like, oh, I didn't realize that you felt that way, or I didn't realize that my actions had consequences. It sort of lent a, cut through his facade a little bit, where you just see him like sort of slump over onto her, and he just kind of like the wind's been taken out of his sails, and he's just kind of having to reckon with the destructive aftermath of the choices that he's made.
Very Damon Salvatore. Sorry, go ahead.
I really love that she was like, I don't want power. I don't want any of this. I just want to feel safe. You said you'd protect me, and I've had a lifetime of not being protected. And we really see how these powerful lords just kind of abuse people and don't think of them as people. Not everybody wants the Iron Throne. Some people just want to be safe at home because it's an unsafe world. And the fact that he couldn't do it, really called him out for what he is and what he's doing. But it kind of calls out all of them for what they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely a world full of morally gray people that you want to root for them, and then they do something where you're just like, man, come on. You gotta. All right. Well, moving on. All right, folks. Any parting thoughts before we wind things down? Anything else you wanted to mention?
If anybody's ever had a maggot bath to save their finger, I'm kind of curious what that feels like. Just send me a message. I will never find out for myself. At least I hope I don't have to. But if you've ever had a hand maggot bath, I'm curious.
Look, it's like those little fish that eat the dead skin on your feet, but worse.
Yeah, I'm not doing that either.
Yeah. And if anyone's had been eaten by crabs, let me know. But really, I'm intrigued by the story overall, but like a part of me is also feels like this would kind of be better if it was written by women, just because of the direction they take with a lot of the female characters. Like, yes, there's a way to handle how women navigate the patriarchy, and this show does not do a good job of that, in my opinion. We see the big moments where Rhaenyra is showing up on the bridge, but we don't see the psychology behind it, those behind the scenes slower discussions. Instead, we're stuck with 12 scenes of Viserys face palming the idea of marrying a 12-year-old. Like, I don't know. I just feel like.
Yeah, no, I think in that also really comes through when you watch the sort of like inside the episode segment, and it's just kind of like, oh, you have the male showrunners and the male director talking about writing women and writing about the patriarchy, and then you do hear from the actresses as well, but it just definitely feels kind of like telling just in terms of how they're presenting that. Their intention may be good, but their execution could definitely be better for sure. All right, folks. Well, on that note, like Corlys Velaryon, it's almost time for us to storm out of this small council meeting. But don't worry, because after a 6-day time skip, we'll be back next week with another episode of All Kings Considered to break down House of the Dragon. Thank you again to everyone who tuned in. And thank you again to my amazing guest. Keisha, where can people find you online?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Keisha Mays, and maybe in a Beyonce video, just to represent the House of Knowles. Who knows?
Of course. Of course, we all rallied to her banner whenever she would raise the colors, for sure. And Mikey, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Burger Mike, and you can find me at the best website anybody ever invented, the one that lets me write about this show for a living, Nerdist.com.
Fantastic. Well, folks, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. And again, in the meantime, tell us, what did you think about this episode? Who is your MVP? And what do you hope to see unfold next week? How many days or months do you think we'll skip ahead? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.